Hey YouTube, this is Ozarks brother Jerry, and this week's Parsha is Vezot Bracha, and that means, and this is the blessing. And for an overview, and this is Deuteronomy 33:1 through 34:12, and it's the last Parsha in the Torah cycle, number 54. So next week we start over. For an overview, in chapter 33, all the tribes in the country is blessed. And then the last chapter, Moshe dies. So that's pretty appropriate that things in there. He gets him to the Jordan, and Joshua gets him over. So I thought it would be interesting to look at the blessings that Jacob gave his sons, or the tribes of Israel, as opposed to what Moses did. Let's see here. Oh, I need to go to the Deuteronomy blessing. 32. All right. So when Jacob's blessing his sons in Genesis, and that's Genesis 49, it's a good thing to go back and look. He does it pretty much in the order like he does all Leah's sons. So first of all, he does Reuben, and he says, and I'm going to just kind of paraphrase here with Jacob's blessings. He says, excellence of dignity, and that excellence is the remainder or remnant. Excellency of power, unstable as water. And he defiled his father's couch. So if you remember, he slept with his father's wife. And when he says unstable as water, to me, what does water do? Well, it gets in everywhere where there's a hole. So it just seems to me that maybe, I don't know, maybe he didn't learn his lesson. And, whenever he can get away with it, he'll get away with it. I don't know, but that unstable as water kind of bothers me. But so Moshe's blessing to the tribe, Deuteronomy 33, he says, let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few. So pretty much all he says is, don't let Reuben's tribe disappear. And the Septuagint, that part about let not his men be few, in the Septuagint, that's according to Simeon. So, but anyhow, so the most blessing that Moshe got out of it, that Reuben got out of Moses, was don't let his tribe disappear, basically. So it's not a stellar endorsement. So we get down to Simeon and Levi, after the deal in Shechem, where they go in and clean house, and they killed their the leader there in Shechem, and Jacob was just not happy about that at all. But here's his blessing to Simeon and Levi. He does them both at once. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations, and as I understand, that means their household effects were gotten through violence. Brothers in cruelty. And it's don't impugn your honor by associating with him. He's a murderer. And that thing about Doug, it gets to the point of hamstringing, like a hamstring. You cut the rear muscles in a horse's foot. Well, they hamstrung an important person, and I presume that's talking about the leader of Shechem. I don't know. And it says they will be divided into Jacob and scattered into Israel. So, but when it comes time for Moses' blessing, there is no blessing for Simeon. He's gone. So, interesting. So Levi had that terrible blessing, like I just read, along with Simeon. But they turned things around, and I would like to read that. And that is Genesis 32, 26 through 28. Then Moshe stood in the gate of the camp and said, who is on Yahweh's side? Let him come unto me. And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. And he said unto them, Thus saith Adonai of Israel, Put every man his sword by his side, and go in and out from the gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor. And the children of Levi did according to the word of Moshe, and there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. So maybe other people stood up with Moshe, but maybe, I don't know, maybe they didn't do it as a tribe, but Levi certainly did. So now let's see what Moses said to Levi. 33, okay. And of Levi he said, and I'm reading in 33:8, Deuteronomy 33:8. And of Levi he said, Let thy Thummim and thy Urim be with thy Holy One, whom thou didst prove at Massah, and with whom thou didst strive the waters of Meribah, who said unto his father and to his mother, I have not seen him, neither did he acknowledge his brethren, nor knew his own children, for they have observed thy word and kept thy covenant. They shall teach Yaakov thy judgments, and Israel thy law. They shall put incense before thee, and whole burnt incense upon thine altar. Bless Yahweh his substance, and accept the work of his hands. Smite through the loins of them that rise against him, and of them that hate him, that they rise not again. So they really turned things around by staying true to Yahweh after the golden calf incident. And to me, this means what I just read. They were blessed with the receivers, of communication from the Most High. That Urim and Thummim, that's what the priest had in his vest to communicate with the Father when they had questions. So how can you have a higher honor than that? And as such, the nation depended on them in their communication with the Most High. And also a curse pretty much was given to Levi's enemies, and a blessing was given to bless his work, especially as workers in the Mishkan, or the temple. So, by being obedient, overtly so, they turned things around for their tribe. So we get down to Judah in verse 7. Well, first of all, Jacob's blessing to Judah. The brethren shall praise, hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. He's going to have control of his enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down to thee. Your siblings are going to have to bow down to you. He shall live well and have peace from his enemies. He shall keep the scepter. He'll always be ruling. The Messiah will be of him in Shiloh, and gather the people. So, man, what kind of... That's a blessing. So now we get to Deuteronomy 33, and Moshe says, well, see, these are a little bit out of order now from Jacob. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone to Yehuda. I'm going to go to Benjamin. So, what Jacob told Benjamin in the blessing was they were the most spirited and warlike tribe of Israel. So, what Moshe tells Benjamin is he was beloved of his father as a son of his old age, basically. The first of his fruits there. He was to dwell in safety by the temple, which was in Jerusalem. Now, let me read this. And this is Deuteronomy 33:12. And of Benjamin he said, the beloved of Yahweh shall dwell in safety by him. And Yahweh shall cover him all the day long, and he shall dwell between his shoulders. Well, he's going to dwell close to Yahweh because Jerusalem is at least partly in Benjamin's territory. So they're going to live by the Mishkan. And And it says, he shall dwell between his shoulders. Well, the shoulders around Jerusalem are referred to as Mount Zion and Mount Moriah. Those are the shoulders of Benjamin. So, a good blessing. So next we have Joseph. Now, we know Joseph had two sons. I believe his wife's name was Asenath, and she was Egyptian. And so things are remarkably different, in my opinion, for Joseph. You know, Joseph, he said, blessed of the Lord be his land for the precious. I'm getting out of order again. I apologize. Let's see what. First of all, let's see what Jacob said about Joseph. A fruitful son whose blessings overflow to other nations. He's too mighty for his enemies, but they harass him at a distance. His momentum of strength couldn't be stopped. Regardless of what it specifically means, there's debate over that. Joseph was certainly to be blessed. Joseph, and that thing about being apart from his brethren, if you look up that word, it's like set apart or consecrated. You know, it's not just that he was separate from them. So he was consecrated. And and I've been reading, I said it in the last Parsha, about Ephraim being in the U.S. and because he's going to be a father of countries, which we used to have sovereign states in a republic. So with just the Articles of Confederation versus a constitution for a country. But anywho, so now let's see what Moshe says about Joseph. And of Joseph he said, blessed of Yahweh be his land for the precious things of heaven, for the dew, and for the deep that coucheth beneath. And for the precious, and as I understand, precious going to have precious dew, plenty of water, and the coucheth beneath. Well, as from what I've read, most people think that refers to wells of water. In verse 14 of 33, and for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things put forth by the moon, and for the chief things of the ancient mountains, and for the precious things of the lasting hills. Now, as I understand, the mountains, that's supposed to refer to all the timber they had up there, and the minerals will be coming out of the hills. Verse 16, and for the precious things of the earth, fullness thereof, for the goodwill of him that dwelt in the bush. Netzaphren to the father, because the father was in the burning bush, right? Let the blessing come upon the head of Joseph and upon the top of the head of him that was separated from his brethren. And that word again, separated, is like consecrated. Verse 17, his glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of unicorns. Now it says the horns, just plural, okay? The horns of unicorns. And unicorns, no matter if that's a unicorn horse type affair or if it's a rhinoceros, they only have one horn. But they're talking about something, Joseph having two horns. The horns of unicorns, with them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth. He'll run them through. He'll conquer everyone. And they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh. So what two countries have run all these other countries through? Well, thus far, it's the United States and it's the UK. Now, I'm not ready to make that argument yet, but this is just an opinion and what I'm reading about. So to Joseph, which is really the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, he was given particularly fertile soil. His crops were blessed. He got the lumber, the minerals, and he got the goodwill of he who dwelt in the bush. And again, he was consecrated as opposed to just being a normal son, in a big family. And he had two horns, Ephraim and Manasseh. So next is Zebulun. So what Zebulun got from Jacob, his father, he shall dwell at the haven of the sea. And as I understand, this is the inland sea, Galilee. Have a border with Zidon, have good hunting and fishing there. So what Moshe says to Zebulun is, and of Zebulun he said, rejoice, Zebulun, in thy going out and and Issachar in thy tents. But so this, okay, chapter 33 of Deuteronomy, verse 18. He includes Issachar too. So he says, and of Zebulun he said, rejoice, Zebulun, in thy going out, and Issachar in thy tents. They shall call the people unto the mountain there. They shall call the people unto the mountain. There they shall offer sacrifices of righteousness, for they shall suck of the abundance of the seas and of treasures hidden in the sand. So he puts Zebulun and Issachar there together. So this, they're going, in thy going out, it says. So they were to be profitable in their coasting voyages. As I understand, they went right around the lake there, hitting different settlements and trading with them. Now Issachar, Jacob gave him the blessing of, he's a strong ass couching down between two burdens. And if you read about that, people are all over the place as to what that means. But and also he paid tribute in the form of labor. He didn't struggle for freedom or independence. From Jacob's blessing, Issachar had good land, and he was just satisfied with that. He didn't develop it. He didn't go out for more land, or he was. I think President Trump will call him low energy, maybe. I don't know. But if we go over to back to Moshe's blessing, and he's included with this Zebulun. They shall call the people unto the mountain. There they shall offer sacrifices of righteousness, and they shall suck of the abundance of the seas. And I read that may be that that's the crustacean that, is it a snail? I forget. That provides the very expensive blue dye. That is making a big comeback the last 15 or 20 years, as I understand. And of treasures hidden in the sand. They said they actually made glass back then from the special sand they had. So, and that was probably pretty expensive. So next, let's go into Gad. And what Jacob said to Gad, the troop. Okay, it calls him a troop, and the troop refers to Gad settling upon the East Jordan. And being where he's at geographically exposes him to sudden incursions of plunderers. But, though ever unready, and I don't know where that comes from, he shall gather forces and repel them. So he was going to be successful, but initially maybe not quite as successful. And what Moses says about Gad, and of Gad he said, blessed be he that enlarges Gad. He's going to make their territory bigger. He dwelleth as a lion and teareth the arm with the crown of the head. So the crown of the head is, as I understand, the princes, and they go out and conquer people. So all of Israel is going to be successful at this point in their history militarily. Next we go to, let me finish up with Gad. And this is verses 20 and 21. And of Gad he said, blessed be he that enlargeth Gad. He dwelleth as a lion, and teareth the arm with the crown of the head. And he provided the first part for himself, because there in a portion of the lawgiver was he seated. And he came with the heads of the people. He executed the justice of Yahweh and his judgments with Israel. So he had the land of Sihon and Og, and that's where the additional land came from. And he rooted the inhabitants out of the land he possessed, that he was going to possess. Next is Dan. Jacob said about Dan, as he was laying there dying, getting ready to die, he shall be a distinct and separate tribe, because he's going to be a judge. Not the strongest tribe, yet militarily important. He conquers his enemies through subtlety, craft. This is the where it refers back in Genesis 49 about Gad, about biting the heel. So either he conquers his enemy through subtlety and craft, or they said it could, I've read it could be a callback to the fall of man and a promise made to Eve. Or, and if you know Hebrew, it could mean both. Hebrew words and phrases aren't limited to just one meaning. So we'll go forward to what Moses said about Dan. And of Dan, he said, Dan is a lion's whelp. He shall leap from Bashan. So a lion's whelp, meaning he had vigor coming to him. He didn't have it all at the time. And he shall leap from Bashan. So he should go from the mountain of Bashan and conquer other territory. And of Naphtali, this was kind of surprising to me. I hadn't read a whole lot about Naphtali. And of Naphtali was what Jacob said was, he's a hind let loose, which is a deer. And that, as I understand, it means he's active militarily, and he's not surprised. He has pleasant words, and to my understanding, that means he gives good intel to the country. So he's looks to me like he's the Jeb Stuart of the Hebrew cavalry. So now, and of Naphtali, Moses says, and of Naphtali, he said, "O Naphtali, satisfied with favor and full with the blessings of Yahweh, possess thou the west and the south." So they were given very good land, and I didn't know this until this week. It's generally accepted that most of the apostles came from Naphtali. I did not know that. So that's certainly a blessing of Yahweh, where it says blessing of Yahweh there in verse 23. We get to Joseph. Yeah, well, I really took off on Joseph already. So that was, just to recap, Joseph, the blessing given to Joseph by Jacob, was inclusive of Ephraim and Manasseh. Joseph was set apart. He was consecrated. So let's go to Asher. Jacob said he shall be a rich tribe. He would not just have the necessities, but he would have the dainties as well. The father always provides for his people, but he doesn't necessarily always give them the dainties. Well, Asher got the dainties as well. Moshe says, and of Asher he said, "Let Asher be blessed with children, let him be acceptable to his brethren, and let him dip his foot in oil." So he's blessed with offspring. He's going to get along well with the other tribes, and he's going to have fertile soil and live in abundance. So those are the blessings. I just thought it was interesting to make a comparison, and I think from the example given by Levi, if we stand for the Father, we can turn things around, or we can be like Joseph, like you always had it going on. That would be preferable. So thanks a lot for listening, and we'll talk to you next week when we start over.